there. So.
Yeah. Start a little bit with your background, 64 junior, 66 open. I'll move quick and then we'll get to 73. We all good?
Yeah, we're rolling.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. Johnny, can you just start with talking about your introduction to playing with in USGA championships? 1955 was the year where you grew up with Jack Fleck and you were young.
Well, my dad talked a little bit about the 55 U.S. Open, the unbelievable upset of Ben Hogan. They were already saying Ben Hogan had won, and then Jack Fleck birdied that last hole to time and beat him the next day. But, I always wanted to win an Open because my dad talked so amazingly emotional about the U.S. Open and how that was the one I had to win. I mean, that was the one that we were gearing up for. He said, that's the reason why we're hitting all these balls and why we're going to Pebble Beach to play and we're going to Olympic Club to play and going to those open type golf courses. Even San Francisco Club was sort of an open type golf course in a lot of ways. And so my dad didn't fly, neither did my mother, so I just played in Northern California. I didn't even go to Southern California, but I did hear that the U.S. Junior, when I was 17, was going to Eugene Country Club. And the Northern Cal officials said that if you qualified, they would take us up there and chaperone us. So I thought, okay, this will be the first time I've left California, and if I can make it. And as it turned out, I was medalist at Olympic Club. I shot 71, and it was a good score back then and on that tough course, and was able to go up and qualify at Eugene and shot 71.68, which is a record score, actually, and it's held for like 40 years or something. But the beauty of that week was I was able, as medalist, to go out first every day at 7 o'clock. And my average match lasted 2 hours and 10 minutes. I was a super fast player like Lanny Watkins, and ended up beating a Mexican little young star there, Enrique Sterling, 2-1 in the finals, hitting a nice 1-iron into the 17th hole there on about 225 par 3. And that was a big deal for me. I'd been winning the Northern Cal Junior and the San Francisco City Junior and medal play, and I was undefeated in high school in matches, and I thought it was pretty hot stuff. But I had never played against guys like Bobby Barbarossa, who is probably the best junior player, and I beat him in the semis and up in Eugene, and so sort of opened my eyes. I knew that I could play good golf, but when I won that, I was all of a sudden I had that mantle of U.S. Junior champion, and that was, of course, all the colleges that were golf schools got a hold of me and wanted me to come to their school, and sort of took a gamble a little bit about going to BYU, and as it turns out, BYU had an amazing team. They had just freakishly put together, and we were one of the top teams with that group. So, but it all sort of started with my dad's dream of the Open, and then winning that junior. That sort of gave me a lot of momentum. That was big for me, and sort of springboard wanting to play USGA events.
Yeah, it seems like it was kind of the foundation of your career, and it sprang from there. Going through some of the matches, you played pretty well through most of them. Really weren't losing, except for, you mentioned your quarterfinal against Barbarossa.
Yeah.
Do you remember any, not to say specifics, but how that match went, since obviously made an impression?
I think I was even with him on the par 3. I think it might have been 15 or something, and a tree hung over the pin, literally a flagstick, and I hit the 7-iron, pulled it just a few feet left of the pin, maybe 8 feet left of the pin, and it sort of hit the tree and fell down and rolled about that far from the hole. He's still complaining about that, by the way. And I ended up winning that hole, and I guess he figured he was going to win the U.S. Junior, and but that was the key shot on that par 3 that got the good bounce off the trees for a gimme birdie and ended up beating him. But I just sort of felt like I was going to win that week. Once I was medalist and was able to play off first every day, I was right in my element there.
And then a couple of years later, 1966, you hear the U.S. Open's going to the Olympic Club, and you had originally signed up to be a caddy for the championship, but you were telling Steve that you ended up qualifying through Salt Lake, San Francisco Golf Club, and just tell us what was going through your mind. It's kind of a home game for you playing the...
Yeah, I mean, I heard that the Open was coming to Olympic in '66, might have been 1963 or so, when I was a junior player, and I was thinking, I'm 14 or 15. By the time I get that age where the Open's coming here, I ought to be able to win it. You know how kids think. Since it was my home course, being a junior member, and I never really lost to anybody at Olympic Club. George Archer used to come there, and he was a tour star, and he wanted me to give him strokes, and as it turned out, he needed a couple strokes because I would beat him pretty good there. So I knew the course, and of course, I never played U.S. Open conditions at Olympic Club where they had long, rough, and hard, firm greens. But I signed up to be a caddy, but this was before the qualifying, and just as a fail-safe thing, if I didn't make the qualifying, and I didn't realize how tough it would be to actually do make the qualifying with one spot up at the Country Club of Salt Lake, winning in a playoff there, and then didn't have too much trouble in the second qualifying at San Francisco Club. But turned out it was, again, another confidence builder. I got the first big confidence builder winning that U.S. Junior, and then finishing 8th place as a teenager and playing with Jack Nicklaus and Lee Trevino the first 2 rounds, which he was sort of scared to death. That was like his first tournament. But it just sort of was a magical week, both of those weeks, really. And that made me realize I could play against the pros. After that Open, I said, okay, I can make a living, definitely make a living doing this. And I love doing it, and this is what I'm going to do.
So you play well in '66, and then leading up to Oakmont, you'd had some success in U.S. Opens. In 1970, you were right there through 36 holes. 71 and 72, another couple top tens. So did you feel like you were primed? You were entering your period where you should be competing and maybe winning the U.S. Open in '73? Yeah,
I mean, by the time I finished 5th at Marion, and I think it was 7th at Pebble, people don't realize is that at Pebble the year before I won in '72, I was like 1 or 2 shots out of the lead on Sunday, and I hit this 5-iron into the 5th hole par 3, and I mean, you couldn't see the ball for the pin. You had it right behind the bunker, the flagstick right behind the bunker, and it hit underneath the lip of the bunker, unplayable. It was another foot, it would have been probably a leaner, and he ended up finishing 7th, but I was not thinking 7th at that time. I was thinking I got a really good chance of winning, and as it turned out, Jack Nicklaus hit that great 1-iron and won that year, but I was right there. So Oakmont, I figured after the 5th and the 7th place finishes and doing well when I was at Olympic Club, and even at Houston Champions, I was right there, that course in Houston. But I thought my game was geared around winning a U.S. Open because that's when my dad groomed me, So my iron game was good, and I drove the ball straight with a little fade. I played a fade a lot then, and most U.S. Open champions that are good at Opens hit a fade, like Hale Irwin. Guys that win it multiple times. The fade is really Jack Nicklaus and Trevino, Ben Hogan. Those guys are faders, and the fade works at the Open.
What had you heard about the course going into it? You're very familiar with Olympia when you played there in '66 and even Pebble Beach.
Yeah.
But here's this kind of prototypical U.S. Open course. You hadn't played it too much going into '73.
No, I never played it. And all I'd heard is it was the hardest course in America, toughest greens to putt in America. And they took pride in the fact that it was the ultimate test, really, of golf. And so I wasn't too worried about it, but I had heard those things, and when I got there, I felt pretty comfortable about it. You had to drive the ball well. I was driving it well then, and pretty good distance by then off the tee. And again, my irons were good, and I thought my putting had sort of come alive. At the Hawaiian Open, I guess it was in January, I copied Jack Nicklaus, actually. I was sort of struggling with my putting. I was probably hitting it in the top 5 best on tour at that time, but I wasn't putting well. And I thought, well, I'll practice. I'll just copy Nicklaus where he gets the wrinkles in the right hand here and the elbow out, and I'll just use that right elbow to just keep that thing from kicking, So I was using that stroke, and literally within 10 minutes of trying it, I was putting really well. I mean, and it stayed going. So I was putting really well. I had that thing worked from 73, 74, 75, and 76, and then my nerves got sort of not too good. But I was putting well, my irons were good, and I had good distance off the tee, so I didn't really have any weaknesses then.
And you, of course, get paired with Arnold Palmer in the first two rounds, and Arnold from Latrobe, just outside. Talk about playing with Arnold for the first two rounds.
I mean, people, they talk about my 63 the last round and winning that Open, and they talk about a lot of things, but what they don't know, most people, is I went through the gauntlet. I'll never forget getting my tee times in that locker room on Wednesday, and I was paired with Arnold Palmer, and it's like, oh man, you got to be kidding me! I'm going to play with Arnold Palmer. This is his backyard. The people are going to be going crazy. They're not going to care about me one iota hardly. And they didn't. When I played those two rounds, and if he made a 20-footer for a birdie, and I had a 10-footer, they didn't exactly stick around to see how I did. I mean, they were already flocking to the next hole, most of them, and his fans were. I don't think people realize how fervent and how wild his fans were and how loyal they were to Arnold Palmer. Tiger had his fans, Jack in his later part of his career had really good fan support, and Trevino had his fans, but none of the fans were like Palmer fans. And so to hang in there, both of us shooting, I guess it was 140 after two rounds, and being right in there, and then winning the Open, that was the 1-2 punch. I mean, to be able to handle Arnold Palmer on Thursday, Friday, and then to struggle a lot on Saturday, and then the round at Sunday, that made it really an amazing roller coaster of emotions.
Playing with Arnold, did that motivate you to play better? That the fans were essentially cheering for him all the way, or was it difficult, or a little bit of both?
I might have had a letdown actually on Saturday after playing with him. I think it was like, oh man, I did well in front of all those fans and with Arnold Palmer. And Saturday was sort of a nightmare. I had a local caddy. Not sure why the USGA did what they did, but they used to just had people would sign up to caddy, whether they knew how to play golf or knew anything about golf. And I had a guy named Lou Bodine who had never, as he said later, never caddy for anybody who broke 90 at Oakmont. And he was just a guy that carried the clubs, and so it was great. I enjoyed being with him, but when I went to the first tee that day, I went through all of where normally the yardage card is, that I did my own yardages with just stepping them off, like TSLFB, which is T-side left fairway bunker or whatever. And I went, and it wasn't in that one, and I thought, well, it must be in the other pocket where the golf balls are, and it wasn't there. And went through all the pockets again, and I realized I don't have my yardage card, and my caddy, everybody walked their own yardages. So I was like freaking out. I mean, it was like, what the heck is going on here? And I realized it was on the nightstand of the house that these people had graciously invited us to stay at their house and the beaches, and it was back at the house, which is about a half an hour away. And so immediately went to my wife, who was there, and said, you got to get back there and find that yardage card and get it to me. And she finally got it to me on the ninth hole. And by the time I stepped on the ninth tee, I think it was 5 over par, and wasn't doing anything right, and everything was going wrong, burying it in the bunkers and 3-putting and things. So she got that to me, and I sort of settled down. It didn't sound like I settled down, but I ended up shooting 5 over. It could have been an 80 round. So that round, and there was a lady that came up to me every day on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, saying after the round, you're going to win the U.S. Open. I'm never wrong. I predict things. And after Saturday's round, she was there every day, by the way. And then Saturday, after the 76, she wasn't there anymore. So I thought, well, that's the end of her, I guess. And then Sunday morning, I got a letter from Iowa that says, you're going to win the U.S. Open. It wasn't postmarked. I didn't have a return address or anything, but I was thinking, man, I've never had either one of those things happen to me where people were predicting I was going to win. And so Sunday, I'm 6 back. Everybody in there, every great player is ahead of me. You had Trevino and Player and Nicklaus and Weiskopf and Palmer and just Miller Barber and Jerry Hurd, my buddy, a young player, a great player. And I didn't think there was really a chance. I was sort of down after the 76, so I was on the driving range. I was down about my last 5 or 6 balls, and this clear thought came into my head: open your stance way up. And I was like, so where did that come from? And so I didn't pay any attention to it. And then it said it again: open your stance way up. And so I thought, well, I try it, and it felt pretty good. Hit the last 4 or 5 balls really well with the open stance. And so I went to first tee. I'm thinking, I don't know about that open stance stuff. I don't know if I want to try that. And then I thought, well, what have I got to lose? I'm 6 back, so just open. I mean, I open it up a ton. I open it up about 6 inches, and so I tried it on the tee and hit a good drive, and I hit a 5-iron in about 5 feet. And thought, wow, that was a good shot. The first hole's without a doubt the hardest opening hole in the world. Nothing even close. That hole is impossible. I think that was, I don't know who designed that, but man, he must have been in a bad mood. That's an amazing hole. And then I knocked it about this far, about 6 inches on 2, and 3 is a tough hole. And it was one of the few times I aimed away from the flag all day, and knocked about 20 feet left of the hole and made that putt. And then par 5, I was in the right bunker and had a long bunker shot and almost went in the hole, but for about that far from the hole, right over the edge of the hole, almost made eagle. So, but then I did what a lot of golfers do. I said, wow, that's 6 back. I just birdied 4 holes right out of that box, and the leaders are probably going to be choking a little bit, or a lot, and probably only going to be about 1 back right now. And of course, that doesn't work when you think that way. And I got this hair in the back of my neck, started standing up and on my arms, and then I started choking. And I never really choked tee to green. I kept hitting the greens, but I left it short from about 8 feet twice, and then on 8 I hit this great forward in there, about 225, right underneath the hole, straight in putt, and left it about that far short, maybe 3 feet short, and did a 360. Came back at me and made bogey after an amazing 4-wood shot. I'm thinking, you're not going to win the Open being conservative and choking. You got to. And I went from sort of gagging a little bit to almost angry from that 3-putt, and I settled back in and birdied 9 and had a terrific back 9, and actually left it short a couple more times. And the 18th hole, the 17th, my ball, I was 8 under through 16, and 17, my ball singed the top lip and just missed by a fraction, and then 18 it went down in the hole and came out. So I mean, it's probably the easiest 63 ever shot in an Open. Hit every green. Average birdie putt was 18 times. If you averaged them all out, was probably about 12 feet from the hole. I mean, it was like I guess ShotLink did a study and called that the greatest round anybody's ever played tee to green. And it was that open stance worked, and I played aggressively all the way through the 18 holes, knowing that I was 6 back, and I knew I'd caught those guys by the time I got to about 15. I birdied 15, but 16, I mean. And it was just a magical round. I guess everybody gets one magical round when you're a good player, but that was, I think it's the only time anybody's ever shot in an Open 8 under. There's been some 7 unders, but no 8 unders, and so that was, from there, my confidence just grew, and I'll never forget Bert Yancey, late Bert Yancey, coming up to me the next week for the first round, and he said, congratulations on that Open win. Now that you're a U.S. Open champ, act like one. It was like, wow. And I got thinking, maybe that's what I needed, and to realize what that was. And because a U.S. Open champion has a certain mantle it has to carry, and so I learned from that comment that he made, and try to act the way I should.
I just want to back up a little bit to Saturday going into Sunday. You're coming off the 76, though you kept it together pretty good in the back 9. What's your mindset going into Sunday? Do you have a number you're trying to shoot? Do you think you can win?
I think I already said every one of those things you asked. I just said them. I said that I didn't think I was out of it, and I was down, and so I don't know if you listen to what I said. I touched on all those things. You guys heard that, right? I don't want to say them again. I've said them.
So let's go back.
Yeah.
You had 1971, the Masters. You're right in it.
Yeah.
On the back 9, have a lead.
I don't want to talk about that either.
No, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
did you learn anything from being in contention to in 1973 after you start so well with the 4 birdies and you make the bogey at 8, but Were you drawing on some of those past experiences, or totally separate?
I can't think that I was that even thought even crossed my mind. All I knew is that I had to, in that last round, I had it going, and I was confident that my tee to green game would hang in there, but I wasn't totally confident that my putting would handle the pressure of a U.S. Open. And so that's the thing that worried me. And you know, it's funny when you talk about a 63. It must have been a great putting round, but it was just sort of an average putting round. It wasn't even. I went through that round one time, and 17 times I had the ball underneath the hole. Never. I only had one downhill putt the whole day. I mean, it was tee to green. Just it was a crazy round. It was just like it was a magical round, and it was. If it wasn't for the fact that my putting was, it was okay, but it wasn't like I was chipping them in, or it wasn't anything 60 footers or anything like that. The longest putt was maybe 15, 18 feet on number 3. It was all the birdies were, you know, there were tap ins or short putts. So I mean, it was the kind of round that. I could have done better, but I had never lost the thought that I was 6 back, and I did go through a little bit of a gag session on 5, 6, 7, and 8, but I did buckle down after that, and I probably learned from other close calls that I had to keep the hammer down. I couldn't let up. I couldn't start playing conservatively. So I was sort of in an amazing zone, though. Tee to green, I just kept hitting them at the flags, and it's not like I said, wow, I got a chance to win the Open, I better be careful. It was a very aggressive round. If you look at my drive that's on film on the 18th hole, it was the longest drive of the day. I carried it 280, it didn't even roll. I swung as hard as I could, and so I'm proud of the fact that I was still aggressive and wasn't trying to sort of get my way in. Even though the putt slipped out at 17 and 18, I was still trying to make birdies.
Did you know where you stood as you were going along on that back nine? Because you had a great round, but
No, I knew exactly where I stood, yeah, because they had Palmer's score up there. And, he thought he was leading. It was an interesting story because when I was walking down 18, Arnold had just missed about, around a 4-footer on 11. He thought he was leading. And he walked up to the 12th tee. John Schley, the late John Schley, told me that he looked on the board, and at the bottom of the board was a J. Miller, and he saw all those red numbers showing 8 under for the day, and realizing he didn't have the lead anymore. And he said, where the, what did Miller come from? That's what Schley told me. And when I got in, even though I didn't birdie the last hole, I knew that Arnold had to play 1 under par from 13 on in, and with the pressure of the Open and him wanting to win at Ligonier and Pittsburgh, I knew that I had won, even though he was on by then probably the middle of closing out on the green at 12. I just sort of felt like he couldn't do it, and I thought, wow, I've won the Open. I wasn't sure, but I had a feeling inside that I had won.
You went off, eighth to last group over an hour before the leader started.
Yeah.
Would you have rather been out in the course toward the end, or because you just had to kind of wait there and watch everyone come in? What's going through your mind? What are you doing at that point?
I didn't have too much going through my mind as far as worrying. It was just in the glow of really the greatest day of golf I ever had, and I was with my wife. My wife was there, and I was doing press interviews. I didn't really have much time to think about or reflect. There was no time for that. It was just going through the different press conferences and people wanting to have autographs, and the next thing I knew, Arnold and John Schley and those guys were coming in on 17 and 18, and as it turned out, John Schley had to chip it in on the last hole to force a playoff, and they almost made it, but I don't know. It was an exciting Open. I always said as an announcer, I wanted somebody to post a score sort of like I did when I was covering the U.S. Open all those years, and then see if the players that were leaders, if they could match it or beat it, and made it very compelling for the viewer, because you already knew what somebody had done an hour or so earlier, and that makes it doubly exciting to see if the guys can wilt under that posting, or whether or not they can excel and match the score and beat it. So it was amazing to win at Oakmont. It was amazing to beat Arnold Palmer. It was amazing to finally get that U.S. Open win that my dad always told me I could win, and that it would sort of fulfill the measure of my creation, so to speak. So that was the highlight of my career.
40 years later or so, looking back at it, do you think that's the greatest round of golf ever played, given everything that was going into it?
I don't know. You know, they voted it the best round ever played. That was a centennial of golf. You know, as a player, I always thought of accomplishments being in 4 rounds, in totals of 4 days. And I never really wanted to go there on just one round, but after I retired, you know, people said that's the greatest round. I was thinking, well, at least I got that going for me. I'm not going to have 18 majors, and I'm not going to win 84 times or something on tour, but at least I have that one round. It's one thing to shoot 63 at Oakmont, and it's one thing to shoot 63 at Oakmont on Thursday or Friday or Saturday, but it's another thing to do it on Sunday to win by one shot. That makes it what it is. You know, that's what sets up the specialness of the 63, is that it was done to win by one shot on Sunday of a U.S. Open, and that's what makes it a great round.
How did that affect or change your life, or did it going forward?
Yeah, it did. It did change my life, and that got a lot of endorsements from that, and of course, it opened up the doors to playing in the World Series of Golf that year, and playing on the World Cup with Jack Nicklaus in the fall, and I went from a young, they called us the Young Lions, 5 of us: Greer Jones, Lanny Watkins, Jim Simons, and Jerry Hurd, and myself were the 5 young lions that they had picked, the press, that were the ones to watch. All of a sudden, I was plugging along with those guys. Jerry Hurd was probably the best of the group by a hair. All of a sudden, I just graduated out of the young lions into a young star, and a lot of people will wilt, but for me, when I won the U.S. Open, it just opened the door to what my potential was, and I started winning a lot. And after that World Cup in I guess it was in November with Jack, we won the team and I won the individual and broke the course record that week. Opened up and won the first 3 tournaments a year, and won 8 times in the U.S. and the biggest tournament in Japan, the Dunlop Phoenix. And so that U.S. Open, instead of sitting back and enjoying the view from Mount Everest, for me it was like, okay, now's your time, you know, now's your prime, and let's see what you can do. And you know, 74 was a huge year, and 75 and 76 are all good years, and it was all because of that U.S. Open win in 73 at Oakmont.
And you know, the U.S. Open since '65 has ended on Father's Day, unless there's a playoff. The Sunday has always been on Father's Day. You mentioned earlier your dad had kind of groomed you to, you know, the U.S. Open was the one to win. Extra special being on Father's Day?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was thinking of my dad a lot. Every Open I went to, I was thinking about him and all the preparation we did, starting at Harding Park in San Francisco, and then San Francisco Club, and also my pro that taught me since I was 7, John Gertzen, and all the people that were close to me knew that the U.S. Open was what I was preparing for. And yeah, I wish I'd have won more than one, but if you're going to win one, that was a good way to do it. And so, yeah, I was thinking of my dad, and I'd already learned from the Masters that I played my first Masters as a pro in '71 and had the lead with 4 holes to go, and all I can think about is my dad is going to see me get the green jacket, and he's going to be so happy. And I sort of got emotional and didn't fall apart, but a little bit fell apart coming in, and didn't win, and tied Jack Nicklaus, but I didn't let that thought get quite so emotional. I was thinking of my dad and thinking about how excited he'll be, but not to the point where I lost my concentration.
That's great. Just a couple more questions,
Yeah, okay.
and we'll get you out of here.
Yeah.
Not related to '73, but the U.S. Amateur 4-ball now is going to the Olympic Club next year.
Yeah.
And you talked about playing with Jack a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit of partner golf, playing in
Yeah.
foursomes 4-ball, you know, how that was different, what that meant to you?
I think the four ball is going to be extremely popular because a lot of guys are not made to do it on their own. To be real honest with you, you guys that are tremendous golfers, but when they tee it up on their own, they get nervous or they get cautious or just can't play their normal game. And I think what you're going to find is there's going to be players that are club champions or great junior players, but they just don't want the pressure, you know. But all of a sudden, with a team member with them, their buddy, their best friend, or their college roommate, or whatever, they're gonna really enjoy the four ball. I think the four ball is going to allow them to play the kind of game they play when they play their best golf, because they'll feel the confidence of their partner. And so I think it's going to be an amazingly popular event, the four ball. And so especially at Olympic Club, it's going to be really good. And there's so much strategy that goes into play. Would you pick a partner that's a steady Eddie down the middle, or do you pick a guy like Dustin Johnson that hits it a mile, makes a lot of birdies and double bogeys? It's you know, it's an interesting thing. Or do you pick a partner maybe that can keep his ball in play and always, and you're the in-play kind of guy and just keep hitting fairways and greens. So there's a lot of strategy of when to be aggressive, when not. And I would, if I was young again as an amateur, that would be like my favorite tournament of the year. I think because it'd be not quite so much pressure, and it would be like just nothing but fun to be with maybe your best friend or guy you admire. And I think the USGA is going to almost be surprised at how popular that is and how many players will come out of the woodwork that normally don't want all that singular pressure. And so I think there are going to be a lot of good stories for TV too, really good stories about how they met or how much they played when they were kids or whatever it is. It's going to be a lot of great stories that week.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods, you've covered him for a quarter of a century.
Yeah.
Can you just put into perspective his run from 1991 to 1996, when 3 straight U.S. Junior Ams, then 3 straight U.S. Ams, where that stands in the pantheon of golf accomplishments?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to watch Tiger when he was at Stanford, of course, and also as a junior player. He played against my sons in the U.S. Juniors, and for him to win the way he did, especially even in Portland when he birdied the last 2 holes to force that playoff and end up winning, that came out of nowhere. That making those kind of pressure putts, even though he'd been doing it on other tournaments that maybe the public didn't know about, but the fact that he won those 3 U.S. Juniors was a real eye-opener. I mean, in match play, it's crazy hard to win 3 tournaments in a row match play, because all you do is run against somebody who gets hot. I mean, it's almost impossible. But he had the thing going for him that he made people sort of wilt, especially as he got winning more and more. And he had that rare ability to hit the shot he had to hit on the end of those matches and make those putts. And then, of course, in the U.S. Amateur, we covered the Newport Amateur with Buddy Marucci in the last round. I actually called it on the last hole. He's probably going to hit it within a foot of the hole, and he hit it a foot of the hole and made that birdie. That was incredible. But the most incredible was probably at Pumpkin Ridge in Portland. Steve Scott's got him 6 down. It looked like a runaway. And of course, Tiger's there with his Jay Brunsley, his psychologist, caddying for him, and you got the Butch Harmon. They got all these people in line because of what he was about to do that we didn't know about it for sure. But we thought he was going to lose. Everybody said he's going to win that 3rd amateur in a row, and but he makes that putt on the 71st hole, and they have the last hole, and he beats him in a playoff, Steve Scott. So that was, again, one of those crazy putts he made at the 71st hole that nobody expected. And then, of course, he goes on tour, and I just covered basically his whole career. I mean, I wasn't announcing when he was a junior, and I was only announcing at Newport and Pumpkin Ridge, but once he turned pro, I was covering pretty much his whole career. And he just kept that rare feat of being able to step it up in the last few holes and make those putts that nobody else really had already. Nicklaus made a lot of key putts. Other players have made key putts, but nobody has made as many pressure putts as Tiger Woods. And he just became the ultimate champion, to be honest with you. And he had the rare ability also to scare people to death. They just couldn't play. When his name went up on the leaderboard, the players just couldn't quite match him. And so it's been an honor to cover his whole career. I always say it's an honor for me because I played Jack Nicklaus in his ultimate prime of his career and able to beat him a few of the times, and then be able to cover Tiger's whole career. It's been one thing I'll cherish, as an announcer for 25 years now. It's been a lot of fun. Hopefully he's got more golf left in him.
Actually, I played with Steve Scott the other day.
And
he's,
did he?
he's still talking about it.
Yeah,
He's head pro at Paramount in New York now.
Yeah.
Two more questions. Spoke with Billy Casper a little bit earlier this morning.
Yeah.
He said you guys struck up a relationship early in your career, and kind of called him brother. Kind of almost like a father figure. Can you talk a little bit about Billy, and then did you mentor anyone later in your career that was coming into the game?
Yeah, Billy, when I met him at the U.S. Open on really the stand, I was low amateur, and he had an amazing win, comeback against Arnold Palmer, and came back on Sunday, and then came back also in the playoff. And I knew, of course, about Billy, and my dad had talked about how tremendous a player he was. He was sort of underrated, but how consistent he was. And he had just joined our church, and I had heard about that, and he was a convert, and he went on, kept playing the tour, but when I went on the tour, I guess 4 years later, he sort of took me under his wing, and he would play a lot of practice rounds with me, and in '69 and '70, and I'd go to, sometimes he'd do those speaking firesides, we call them, and he would have me come with him, and then he had me start talking a little bit, 5 minutes, and he'd talk 45 minutes or 50 minutes. But up to about 1972, he started telling people, this young player is going to be a great player. And for a guy like Billy Casper to be telling the press and telling people he met, watch out for Johnny Miller, he's going to be a great player, that was really big to me, for confidence that a guy like that would believe in me, and because he was an amazing player, just an amazing player. And so we became very close, and the combination of him sort of giving me a piece of him is in the way he went about looking at a course and taking it apart with smart shots off the tee, and where to be careful on holes like Augusta. Would go around Augusta, and would go around the U.S. Open courses, and he would show me how he thought. And he was the guy really with the first pre-shot routine. People don't realize that, but his caddy, Del Taylor, I remember playing with him in a tournament at San Diego, and he played very fast, but he would look at the yardage, and he would really quickly say, Del, what do you think? 6 irons, 165, and Del would say, yeah, hit a little draw down there, whatever. And then he'd grab the 6 iron out and go to the tee, take one little half practice swing, get in there, and bam. And if anybody bothered him anywhere there, he would put the 6 iron back in the back, pull out the yardage card, say, what do you think, Del? 165? And Del would say, yep, 165. What should I hit? A little draw. He'd go back to the tee, take this half practice swing, and knock it down there. And when I saw him do it, I thought, man, this guy is really getting weird, But he had it so set, and would only take, let's say, 20 seconds to do all that. I realized how important it was, like Jack Nicklaus had showed me, that you play your practice rounds the way you play tournament rounds, and you have a certain number of waggles and all the things, your mannerisms you do, and if something gets in the way, you should start over and do it again. Even though I never did that at the time, I would just go ahead and hit it. But I realized I was learning from Billy and the way he took apart a golf course conservatively. I was more aggressive, but and he always pulled for me, and I pulled for him, and we have such a great relationship now. He's such a sweet person, and it's like my older brother. He's quite a bit older than me, but I owe a lot to Billy Casper.
Such a nice man.
As far as for me, sharing or taking Johnny Miller along, so to speak. I've had other BYU players. I guess I have a tendency to gravitate towards the kids coming out of BYU. Like Ray Leach was an amazing player and maybe one of the greatest college players ever. And I played quite a bit of golf with him. And of course, Mike Reed was my really good friend on tour, and tried to help him with his swing and sort of tell him the kind of things I thought about and how I went about doing things. And so Mike Reed was probably the guy that I played the most golf with, played the World Cup with him. And it was tough for me when when I left the tour. I really missed not being there with him and playing practice rounds with him. But there were other young players too. But Mike Reed was sort of the way Billy was with me.
And last question here: if you were in charge of golf in the United States, what would you do to ensure the health of the game?
Well, the game is always going to survive. It's such a great game, and it's just whether or not it gets broad-based. It's a tough sport in that a great athlete has the most trouble with it because they're just used to. I mean, when I was 12 years old, I tried bowling. The first game, I bowled 173. It was sort of like, not that that's great, but for that young a kid, never done it before. I didn't even know how to bowl, except my dad sort of showed me how to take the steps and use the little angle. And, so when you're a really good athlete, you expect to do pretty well when you pick up a sport. But golf is not that way. So a good athlete would try it, and it'll look so silly and so bad as far as the outcome of the shots that a lot of times the great athletes gravitate towards the things that they can do well right off the bat. And so what happens is you get a lot of those guys that maybe could be great champions. They'll go into other sports that show off their athletic ability. But it is a great game, and probably the greatest game when you combine the thinking, the emotions, even the honesty of the rules, just the way you get along with people, all the different courses and different weather things you got to deal with. It is a game that, if you'll hang in there, will hook you. And so I think in golf, we might have gotten carried away a little bit with how difficult the courses have been designed. And maybe the game has gotten a little away from the top of the game from maybe how far the guys are hitting the ball. But the growth of the game has got to come from the parents, and especially the grandparents. The grandparents are the ones with the time. So the parents can get the kids going on it because they play some golf, but it's up to I believe it's up to the grandparents, since a lot of homes are both the husband and the wife have to work because the cost of living is so high. It's the grandparents that have the time and usually the money to get the kids to the courses or get them to the junior tournaments, and they're the ones that are going to pass the game along and groom champions. Now, as far as getting a lot of the kids out there to play, it might be hard. Maybe golf is not ever meant to be where it's like baseball or basketball or even football, but it's going to always be a great game. But I would like to see the parents be less selfish with their own time and bring their kids out there, and especially the grandparents. That's the future of the game, if you ask me, is the parents who got it. Like my father won the sportsman flight in the San Francisco City Championship. As soon as he started me at 5, he basically gave up golf to groom me to be a champion player. And that's a rare thing to sort of drop your game to provide it for your son. And I'm not saying people should quit their own game, but it's up to the parent and especially the grandparent to make the kids fall in love, because golf will make you fall in love with it. If you just give it a chance, it's got kind of like talons that just pull you in. Golf's an amazing game, and the more you get involved with it, the crazier you are about it. And it's the greatest sport because you can do it your whole life, and you can do it with your wife and kids and business, and just I think it makes you a better person. I think golf is amazing that way. It makes you handle your temper and emotions and honesty and how well you get along with people. It's just, I think there's not too many bad citizens that are golfers. Golfers are usually pretty straight, solid people. So get those kids involved in golf, and there'll be more people out there, good people out there.
Well, with that, we'll let you hit some balls. Thank
Wait,
you so
wait,
much.
I have a question.
You don't? Okay.
You guys are gonna wear me out here. That's a long.
Just two things I wanted to ask.
Two things.
When he said to you, you're a U.S. Open champion, now act like one. What did that mean to you? And did it make you think that, well, maybe I hadn't acted like one before, or how'd you take that?
Well, when Bert Yancey said the day after the U.S. Open, now that you're a U.S. Open champion, make sure you act like one. I was just sort of a young guy, I was having a nice time out there and enjoying golf, but all of a sudden he made me realize it was sort of like, wow, yeah, I guess I am U.S. Open champion. I guess U.S. Open champions are supposed to carry themselves better and maybe not smack my club against something when I hit a bad shot, or do something flippant like maybe young people do. And it made me think twice about maybe acting like a young, rambunctious kid, and made me grow up faster, I think. So it was a good comment at the time, and I think it maybe gives some self-reflecting on who I was and how I carried myself. So I'm glad Bert Yancey told me that. He was a pretty good friend after that.
And my one final thing,
Yeah.
your 63 and Jack's final round 86 at the Masters. Everything's different, I get that, but what must his feeling have been? I think you understand what I'm getting at.
Well,
Comparing those kind of rounds.
People compare great rounds, and that I've carried them on to winning championships, and mine was my signature moment with a 63 and 73 at Oakmont. But in 86 at the Masters, they had one of the writers had written that week that Jack was washed up and over the hill, and a lot of people believed him and wanted to believe it, and a lot of people didn't. But there were quite a few that said, yeah, he's right, yeah, Jack's done, he's never going to win a major again. So it was a sweet win, especially with his son Jackie caddying for him, and the putt he made at 17, which nobody reads correctly. Even Jackie read it incorrectly, but Jack Sr. knew that putt flattened out at the end instead of moving to the right. And I had misread that putt myself, but to make that putt, and then the great two putt in the last hole up over that hill to knock it up there like that, and then wait around and see what Norman would do, and that had to be such a sweet win. I had a very similar win myself. I had retired in 1989 and was playing basically one tournament a year at Pebble, and in 94, after just playing one tournament a year for 5 years, I was able to have that week come alive and beat Watson down the stretch as a TV announcer. And a grandfather, pretty rare win, and so I could really relate to Jack's 86 win, because they said he was washed up, and everybody said I was long washed up. But to beat Watson down the stretch at that one, that was probably my most enjoyable moment in golf, because it made me realize maybe I shouldn't have retired at 41. I still had golf left in him, and I think Jack got the same feeling. Maybe there's more golf left in him, and it was a totally enjoyable round, that great round that he shot there in 86.
Good to see you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
What,
Good job.